Hello and welcome to another midnight showing. And yeah, it's really bright. I needed a lot of light this time. This one is a doozy. I just got out of Exodus, Gods and Kings. Not since Noah have I seen a story that butt fucked. Sorry, I don't want to swear too much. I'm trying to tone it down a little bit, but this movie. For those who don't want spoilers, don't see this. Maybe it's worth a rent when it comes out on DVD. Maybe, but not in theaters. Not in theaters. This was painful. Not to say that it was. There was a lot of good things about it. There are a lot of things that worked and things that I thought were very, 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 very good changes from the quote-unquote original source material. So, get the elephant out of the room out of the way. There were good things about it. All of the actors are very good, except for the guy who plays Ramesses. Egerton, I think his name was. That guy was horribly miscast. With the exception of him, everybody was good. Even the Sigourney Weaver cameos. Yes, she's cameo. She's not actually in the film. I think there was only 2-3 scenes inside there that actually had her inside of it. Same with Ben Kingsley, but Ben Kingsley actually kind of did something. And he's finally in a role where he's not playing the bad guy. I know, it's rare. But yeah, so going into the spoiler version, there were a lot of things that just... Okay, the good. As I said, it was well acted. I was really skeptical on Christian Bale as Moses, but for what they were trying to do, it worked. From a screenplay standpoint, I can understand this film really working and jiving. And man, will that guy just leave and stop revving up his engine? But yeah, from a screenplay standpoint, I could completely see this film working. What they were trying to do was they were trying to mesh reality with religion. What do we know about it? Well, we know the 10 plagues. Well, were they actually plagues, or were they something caused by something else? Well, that's a good way of angling it. And if God really was going to choose somebody to lead his people to the land of milk and honey, he'd pick a leader. So, changing from the source material slightly, he's not really a prince of Egypt, he's a general of Egypt. Okay? And he knows that he's not Ramesses' brother. Again, okay? But he's a general, he cares for him like a brother, and it's well acted on Christian Bale's part. It didn't feel... I'm not going to say forced, but Christian Bale, ever since he left Batman, the Dark Knight stuff, his stuff just feels gimmickish. You can tell it's Christian Bale acting and not a character. With Batman, it felt like a character, like he understood him. This was well acted. I could see him working as Moses, as a general of Egypt, trying to lead these people and discover God along the way. Yeah, he doesn't actually believe in God for more than this movie, which is... I'm not talking about the beginning part, no. I mean, I'm talking about the actual... when he's leading these people and starting a revolution and trying to force Ramesses' hand to send my people home, let my people go. Okay, I'll get to that line in a second, but thank you, Megaplex. Free drink on my way out. So I thought I might name drop them for all those in the area who need to know that Megaplex is the only place in 200 miles. But going on again, on a screenplay standpoint, this all works. You try to think about the plagues logically. Well, the river of blood, what caused it? Well, that'd be the alligators, the giant motherfucking alligators that are, or crocodiles, whatever you want to call them, because I can't tell which, I don't care either. But they were I mean, they were bigger than my car. I'm in a Honda Civic 2007, by the way, and these things were bigger than my motherfucking car. I'm sorry, I don't want to swear, but yeah, they were huge, and they literally ate the boat to get to the people on the boat. But yeah, they eat the people on all of the fishing boats, and the blood from the massive amounts of people mixes with all the water, which in turn kills all the fish, so fishing's screwed. And then you have your river of blood. Well, the dead fish combined with the bloody water makes the water uninhabitable. So all the frogs that live in the Nile come out of the water to try to find another fresh source to live. Thus, the frogs and the boil, the frog plague part of it. Those frogs can't find fresh water, so they all die off. They start decomposing, and they bring in bugs. Lots of bugs, which brings in lots of disease and boils and ruins food, which is another one of the plagues. Not the locusts, but just bugs. Lots of flies. And again, that's how most all of these, the plagues work inside of this, until you get to the locusts, the hail, and the literal act of God, which is killing all of the firstborn children. And it was all very, very well animated. It's not as good as the Prince of Egypt. I just have to say that right there. The Prince of Egypt did this right. I don't care if it's an animated film, people. I really don't. You need to watch it, and you need to take it seriously. That balanced religion and faith versus reality very, very well. This did not. On paper, I can see exactly where they're going for it. But in practice, it doesn't work. It didn't work here. Ridley Scott, I'm sorry, but you really, really need to direct something good. Please. What? Going on with more of the good. Some of the other things I thought were very, very good with this, before I completely tear this movie a new one. The effects were nice. Some of them looked really cartoonish, but I think that was kind of the point they were going for. So I'm not going to say that it was a bad thing. What else was there? Something else. Oh, John Turturro as Setai. I can never pronounce that pharaoh's name. The one before Ramesses' father, who was supposed to be Moses' father, if you know, but again, he knows. And John Turturro was actually very, very dignified. I didn't think that was possible. Even in his best roles, they're usually screaming, yelling over the top with lots of swearing. No, he actually played this one very, very well down until he was actually berating his son inside of it. That was really good. John Turturro. If only the guy who did Ramesses were half as good as you. Yeah, the guy who played Ramesses, Egerton, like I said, he was horrible. He didn't know how to convey emotion until he started yelling. And when he was yelling, when it was a really, really heavy moment, he did great. When he's talking to Christian Bale as Moses, when he's talking to Moses, nothing. I got nothing from this guy. I really think SpongeBob would have been a better person to put inside of there. It was. More of the good. There was something else I wanted to talk about. Gotta think. The other good part was the actual tactics that Moses is using to actually, set this revolution in order. That was really well done, because I could see this revolution working. And Moses takes his time. He knows that he's got to do it right, or everybody dies. That is very well done. I'm gonna turn on the heater a little bit. Yeah, that was really well done, and I like that. He doesn't strike at Ramesses directly. He goes to Ramesses, threatens him, telling him to let his people go, and some anti-American bullshit that's thrown in there for no goddamn reason other than we need that. But he puts him out there, tells him what his demands are, and then he starts secretly training everybody, going on covert guerrilla-style warfare missions to take out not strategic military posts or supply lines, but the actual like food stores, and making it harder and harder and harder to for everyone to live their lavish lives. They're not going out there killing people. They're not going out there. They blow up some of the stores, but they make sure that nobody's inside. They clear everyone out, and they do a good job, and it's quite clear that what they're trying to do is not hurt anybody, but to make it harder for them to live the way they do. So that it's not just the Hebrew slaves telling them, let them go. It's the actual Egyptian people telling Ramesses, get off your butt and do something. That's a very good idea of how to run a revolution. You're not the bad guy, and you're making the leaders show just how corrupt they are to the regular people. So you get more people to come along with it. That is a very good thing. But then their literal interpretation of God comes into this picture and says, you're not working fast enough. Yeah. Give kudos to they actually have God in the movie. And God is a little kid. Child actor who actually acts better than freaking Ramesses does. Give that kid some points, because he wasn't bad as far as child actors go. He was completely pointless and unnecessary, but not bad. I will give him that. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that I actually thought was explicitly good. There's some neutral things that, I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have changed this. I probably would have made it a little bit closer to the Ten Commandments or the book, The Prince of Egypt. But I can see where they're going with a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to say that I disagree with the choice per se, because I don't agree with it. But more, I disagree. I disagree with the execution, which is completely Ridley Scott's fault. There are 4 writers on this thing, and I'm pretty sure that 2 of them were called in for rewrites after he was given the original script. And those are the 2 people who actually, you have the two main writers, Blah and Blah, and then you have 2 people with their own bracket and everything, and Blah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the first 2 wrote the thing, and the third guy was called in for a rewrite because some of the scenes didn't work or something. And then after they shot some more of that and realized they screwed up, the next person was called in to fix everything. My guess on how the writing session on this one went, because you can tell that in the middle it really doesn't jive at all, and that there were plenty of things that were changed. Megaplex. Now, going on to the bad, this movie does not respect the religion that it's trying to extend out. When I said that this works on paper, I really do mean that, because on paper you can fit more respect inside of there. They try to make everything logical, which, as I was saying earlier, with the plagues, kind of makes sense. But you don't want that. These are literal acts of God. When the Prince of Egypt did this, it did it right. When Moses comes in and he puts a snake in the ground, showing the power of God, and the stick turns into a snake, and then the priests copy that same exact image, They use literal smoke and mirrors inside of that, which, again, modernized a little bit, but it does it so goddamn well. But it shows that there could have been trickery there. Something that they couldn't see. There's a lot of flashes, a lot of smoke, there's a lot of mirrors. It could have been a trick where they switched their sticks out for snakes that they had on hand. Which is a very good way of doing it. In this picture, we have comic relief explaining to the audience how this logical string of bad juju happens by literally talking like this. So first the alligators, they ate the people and the blood mixed into the water, and then the blood killed all the fish and whatnot. Then guess what happened to the frogs? Guess what happened? Oh, the frogs, they jump out of the water to not die like the fish, but because they can leave it when they want. But they need water to survive, so they all die. And then as they decompose, the bugs come in and bring in more stuff. And shut up! That's literally how this guy explains these literal acts of God with logic. His scenes were so aggravating. Look, we don't need comedic relief here. What we need is you taking this seriously. And they weren't taking it seriously. And part of the problem here is the guy they chose to play Ramesses. Ramesses cannot convey human emotion at all. By God, does this guy suck! When he's inside the middle of the battle, he wasn't bad. When his son dies, he's because of the last plague, not bad. Very well delivered. When he's talking to freaking Christian Bale inside after his son dies, where he finally tells them, "Get out! Get out, all of you!" Ooh, very well done. Very, very well done. Everything else inside of this from that guy is completely stone-faced. And he talks a little like this, don't you know? This guy doesn't know how to act unless he's in an emotional point. He keeps calling Moses his brother, but I have no belief that these two even grew up in the same palace together. They have no camaraderie at all. They don't. All Ramesses ever is trying to show is jealousy towards Moses. Now, if that had actually been like the original part of it, where they were brothers and they didn't know that Moses was wasn't actually part of the family, and there was an actual threat to the throne, I would understand that. I really would. But there isn't one. There is no threat to Ramesses' reign. Why is he jealous? Because his dad likes him a little bit better? You are a lazy idiot who wouldn't even go get a freaking report after your dad, the Pharaoh, ordered you to do it. Not asked, ordered. You're not Pharaoh yet. Some kissing up to the actual Pharaoh is not a bad idea. Especially if he's your dad. He's trying to teach you how to lead the people. And unlike Prince, again, I bring it up because it was done so much better, unlike the Prince of Egypt or the Ten Commandments, this guy, John Turturro, is not even a bad guy inside of it. Yes, they have slaves. Yes, they're cruel and they're cruel, they're whipping, all that stuff. Yes, all of that is bad. But John Turturro, as Seti or whatever, is not a bad guy. He knows full well that these guys, that how everything works. He knows how to keep the people in check, especially with the slaves. He knows to give them enough that they aren't going to strike against him. But he knows to keep them lower, so he has a slave workforce. And when he's trying to get his son to go get the goddamn report on the slaves who are mining, getting all the rocks out of the quarry to build the goddamn pyramids and tombs and shit, it really does show. He cares. He cares about Egypt. The guy who plays Ramses in this does not, which completely contradicts every other version of this I've seen. He cared about Egypt. He did not care about the slaves. And that's what got them in trouble. Seti actually did give a damn about some of the slaves, which, again, in The Prince of Egypt, when Joseph finds out about them killing all of the firstborn sons, which is not given in a vision, by the way, which I didn't really hate, but again, when there's no confrontation about it. One of the best emotional parts for Moses inside of the Prince of Egypt is when he confronts Seti about the killing of 1,000 firstborns. At least I think it was 1,000. Where he drowned them all inside of the Nile. And the only way that Moses was saved or spared was because his sister floated him in a basket downriver, where he just happened to get picked up by the mother of Ramses. And they raised him as his own, as a brother, so that they could blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. One of the most emotional moments is when they confront him about this. Moses never does any of that in this. And Ramesses, my God, you grew up with this guy. He was your brother. Give a fucking shit. He doesn't give a shit in the whole movie. When he hears about Moses' past from a corrupt politician who only is bringing this up because Moses called him out for being a thief, for stealing profit from the quarry to fund a lavish lifestyle that would make even the Pharaoh in this movie blush. I mean, good Lord. If this were done by HBO, every single one of his female servants who are in scantily clad clothing would be topless. That's how bad they make this guy out to be. And you heard this from a man you don't trust. They make it quite clear that Ramses doesn't trust this guy. And when he brings this up to freaking Moses, who Moses tells him it's not true, he doesn't know for sure. He hasn't investigated all this. Why didn't Moses, after he heard this, go talk to the Pharaoh? Just to find out whether or not the massacre he was told about by the Hebrews was actually true. Because it seemed like he didn't know. It seemed like Christian Bale's character really didn't know about this. Okay, why didn't he investigate? No, he just let Seti die and then Ramses takes over the throne. Okay, whatever. Huh? And then when this guy brings up the information and Ramses confronts Moses about it, he brings in Moses' mom, who is not Ramses' mom. Apparently she was the wife of a general, and that's why they don't know each other. But apparently his sister also went downstream with him, and the mother adopted her and made her a servant girl inside of the palace. Okay. You remember how much the servant girl did inside of the 10 Commandments, or the sister did inside of the 10 Commandments, as well as inside of the Prince of Egypt, where she kind of gave Moses a new life where they would inevitably meet his wife inside of that nice little shepherd farm. Remember all that? she's here as one little plot point, and Ramses threatens to cut off her arm in front of Moses. For what? Lying to him? You're taking information from a guy you don't freaking know, that you don't trust, that Moses is a Hebrew, that he killed 2 guards, which is another one of those there's a lot of pointless scenes in this, but I'll get into that in a minute. He kills 2 guards, and he calls up Moses' mother. Moses' mother tells him that the story is bullshit. You have no reason not to believe her. None. None whatsoever. But I don't believe you. So I call in the servant girl that was supposedly your sister. She confirms the story that 3 people you should trust have told you is not true. Because you look into their eyes, you can tell that they're lying? Is that what you're telling me? This conflict is so forced, it's not even funny, and Ramses couldn't give a shit because he's the whole time. He does nothing to emphasize that he has any form of emotion towards any of these characters. Stone-faced and talking in fragmented sentences like he doesn't know his fucking lines. It's not funny. It's not emotional. It's not real. And when Moses defends his sister, he screams, "Yes! Yes!" And he's instantly locked away and sentenced to banishment. And then then Ramses is talking to his mother in the next scene, Sigourney Weaver. And Sigourney Weaver wants him dead. Why? This is literally the first time you've been allowed to talk. Why do you want Moses dead? There's no threat to your son's rule. There's no threat to your position. This is literally the first time, other than 2 lines in the last scene, that you are allowed to talk. And bad enough, this is the one time that Moses shows any form of respect or anything to Moses. His mom's saying, "You should kill him. If this had been anyone else, they'd be on a death penalty. They'd be hanging by a noose right now. They wouldn't even have a day off. Guards would be killing him right now." And he says, no. He told me what I wanted to hear. He confessed to the crime to save a servant girl. And that's all I saw in him. That's the first time you have shown any form of camaraderie for this man, who was supposed to be your brother. But not in this version, but he's supposed to be treated like one at the very least. And for a person who doesn't believe in mystics, this whole thing is happening because you're afraid that the mystic was right, that because he saved your life in battle, you're going to lose your throne. You starting to see what I mean about this? Ramses doesn't convey any emotion inside this, and if he could, it would have actually worked. If he's trying to fight himself between his jealous side and his loving brother side, I would completely buy that. But he's not. He's jumping on you must be evil trying to kill everything. You must be a Hebrew spy that has been invested in my ranks for God knows how long because I can't think with my fucking brain. And I haven't even gotten to their interpretation of God yet. You starting to see why this might not be worth seeing in theaters? Getting off that subject, moving on to something else that I brought up and I might as well bring up because I have a tendency of skipping things I would like to say sometimes for time constraints. This time I'm not going to limit myself to that. This might be a little bit long, but you need to understand why this is shit, so it's not to be repeated, Hollywood. There's a lot of scenes in this that are pointless. And I do mean that. Completely 100% pointless. They're there, and then they're gone again. There's a scene where Moses and Ramses are talking. Ramses doesn't want to go to collect the report they're supposed to get. And Moses is telling him, it's okay, I'll get it. Just try to forget what happened in the battle so we can move on. And I don't care about any prophecy. You don't believe it. I don't believe it. Just move on. It'll be fine. Ramses is got a giant snake all over his body. A giant cobra. There's a vat of snakes with a hot coal in the middle that they're all staying warm around because snakes are cold-blooded. Yes, this is a good way of keeping snakes in check without them actually not leaving a barrel, especially at night. But really? What's the point? When Moses walks in, he instantly takes the snake off and puts it back inside with all the other snakes. And then and then as soon as they basically establish that Christian Bale's Moses is going to go get the report, he reaches in there and another really bad CGI snake pops up. Looking an awful lot like the freaking vagina penis thing from whatchamacallit, Prometheus. You know, the one that infects the guy by going into his suit and wrapping around his arm. It looks a lot like that. It's pretty much colored like it too, but it's supposed to be King Cobra. It flans out, catch, and he wraps around his arm, and then it replaced with a real King Cobra, and he starts draining the venom into a little shot glass, and then he drinks the venom. It's good to have a little bit of poison inside your system. That way, next time that you may get bitten, it might be able to ward off the poison that you already have. Like the bite of my father. Scene ends. No point to that scene. At all. There's a lot of little scenes like that that are pointless. Scattered throughout this whole thing. The goatmen, the goat and sheep herders who want to use the well. Well, Christian Bale's on his exile path. Completely goes nowhere. And just like Thor and Thor to the Dark World, this hit plot points but didn't show anything. When Moses is traveling east into Canaan because he can't go back to Egypt. He's been banished. He's already had 2 assassins sent on him by Sigourney Weaver, who makes no other appearances inside this film. Yeah, I'm not even joking. And we only know that was her because when Moses finally goes back 12 years later, after getting his visions of God, he puts a sword to freaking Ramses' throat to give him the ultimatum to let his people go. And he says, you tried to kill me. Like, no. That was my mom. She always wanted you out of the picture. Who do you think led your sword somewhere where you would find it? Okay. That's no guarantee he's gonna live, guys. And, little scenes that are all pointless just to push up the runtime. There was no need for this to be 2 hours and 40 minutes. You could cut 20 minutes off of this. Easy. And they don't show the relationship between Christian Bale and his wife. They don't show them, having a party together or talking all that much. No, it's like, it's one conversational scene and then the next scene, they're getting married. with no distinguishable passable sense of time. Now, admittedly, after they're married and after they've had their kid, there's a lot of really good stuff there. Christian Bale doesn't believe in the religion, but he's not against his wife teaching their son about it. Fair enough. Fair enough. He doesn't believe it, but he respects her and her beliefs enough to let it pass on to their son. That's very good. But just being himself around him is detrimental to that cause, because he doesn't truly believe. When he casually talks with his son, he says things that contradict the religion. Like, why would God allow us to cross every mountain except that one? Well, that's God's mountain. Well, why? It's a logical question, and it causes conflict, legitimate conflict, and they have to work around it. That is a very well good scene. So don't say that there's nothing good inside of this film. There's a lot of good inside of there. But for every good thing, I can point out another crappy thing. Like the fact that there's so much anti-American bullshit thrown inside of this. When Joseph goes to make his ultimatum to Ramses, he confronts him about the assassins. Fair enough. Let's get that plot point out of the way. And he tells him to make things better, that things have gotten worse, that people's bodies are burning out there. Or what do you expect me to do? What do you want me to do? I can't. What do you want me to do? Well, I want you to. Well, you could always, pay them. They're Egyptians. They have rights. Let's give them their rights. Treat them like any other Egyptian would. Give them the pay they deserve for such work. Blah 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 blah. Or let my people go. Why didn't you just stick with the original source material and say, let my people go? That's a powerful enough line on its own. You don't need to throw in all this stuff about equal rights, fair pay, all this other crap that doesn't need to be in there. The only reason why it's in there is because they want to try to bring logic to the situation. Which inevitably leads me to what the biggest sorry, my voice is getting hoarse from bagging on this movie so much, because it's just, I wanted to like this. I really do. But I can't. It's Noah all over again. It really is. It's... God is not omnipotent in this. God is physical. Well, not physical. God is represented in this movie by a little child who says, I am. And that's how you know it's God. And as I said, he was actually a better actor than the guy that plays Ramesses, so I give that kid credit. He seems like he has a legitimate future inside of Hollywood. But here's the problem. When Moses first meets God on the mountain, he's chasing sheep that ran up there. Okay, a mudslide happens. Kills the sheep and starts dragging Moses down. And he hits his head. When he comes to, he's stuck in the mud all the way up. All you can see is his face and part of his beard. But, yeah, he's just right there. And a child walks up. And the bush is burning in the background with white flame. And he starts talking and building a pyramid with little rock bead things that he's got. And the conversation isn't that bad in this first scene. It's not. But then he keeps reappearing to Moses throughout the rest of the film at periodical increments, basically asking for status reports on how everything is going. When Moses starts the revolution, he does it like a logical person, but it's not fast enough for God. Well, what the fuck do you want him to do? He's doing it right so that people on both sides aren't getting hurt. So that people on both sides can come out of this better. God doesn't want that. God wants all people to suffer. Which inevitably leads to a very logical and emotional point when Christian Bale is beholding the plagues. Because the plagues do not just affect the Egyptians. They aren't targeted at the Egyptians. They're targeted at everybody. Everybody gets sick from the frogs and the flies and the boils. The food is gone because of the plagues of locusts and shit. And Christian Bale actually asks him, who are you punishing? Is it them? Or is it us? Or do you want to punish everybody? That is a very well logical, legitimate, emotional moment by Christian Bale as Moses in this situation. But the problem is that it completely misses the point. The point of the plagues was to punish the Egyptians for how they're treating the Hebrews. Not hurt both sides. God doesn't care. Why is he even helping the Hebrews if he's well content on killing them? And the only time that these plagues do not affect the Hebrew slaves in any way is until the last one, where God is going to take all the firstborns, which was done very, very well. I kind of like the way that Prince of Egypt did it with the floating ghost thing, but actually having God be like this literal shadow, and then the second that it crosses over a house that doesn't have the right markings on it, firstborn's dead. It was done very well. But it's the only time that God in this picture is specifically targeting somebody. And even then, the reason why the Hebrews weren't affected by this is because Moses said, slaughter the lamb and mark their doors and their doorways with its blood. Again, that's the only time. God is a small, obnoxious child inside of this. If God gave a shit, why did he wait 400 years? And unlike before, inside of the Ten Commandments and inside of the Prince of Egypt, he's like, I have to keep bringing it back to them because those versions did this amazingly. He needed Moses. Moses had a part to play. Moses is what directed these miracles, the plagues, on all these acts of God at the Egyptians. He proved God's power by turning his stick into a snake. He proved God's power when he summoned the locusts on the Egyptians, not on the Hebrew settlements. When he summoned the frogs, when he summoned the hail, Moses is the one that directs this at them in all the other versions. In this one, Moses is sitting here watching, doing nothing. Why would you do this? You're removing him. Oh, we need to bring logic to this to make it seem like it's not actually God doing it to everybody else in life. But that completely misses the point of this story. And that's the biggest problem, is that on paper, this sounds like a good idea. It does. Bringing the logic so that you can't really tell if it's God or not. But then you have a literal God who appears to a man in this. You can't have it both ways. And when he parts the Red Sea, this is probably the biggest dump you could possibly take on the original source material. Why? Because Moses, I keep thinking of Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. I'm sorry, but Moses is supposed to part the Red Sea and give them a walkway, using a literal miracle of God to escape the wrath of Egypt. That's what he's supposed to do! What does he do in this version? Absolutely nothing! He bitches! If he sat down and prayed for a miracle and asked God to help, I would understand. No, he bitches! Because he led his people to ruin following a God who didn't give a shit. Understandably, did not give a shit. He takes his sword, which, again, they replaced his staff with a sword. Going for the general motif, I get it, but do not see how this is completely not what you're supposed to do. With a story like this, he takes a sword because he's finally given up and he throws it into the water. And it lands blade down into the sand. It was a cool shot. But, yeah, he bitches him out and says, because of you, I've led them to ruin. I've done this, and we're all gonna die. He throws it out there, and he goes to sleep. There's a cut-in scene where he wakes up in the middle of the night and looks out to the water. But, again, scene that goes nowhere. But the next day, Moses wakes up, looks out to the water, and the tide has receded in a giant current going to the side. How does he know this? He can literally, he threw his sword into water that was so deep that you couldn't see his sword. But then he looks out there, he can see his sword again. It's pulled all the water to the side. God has given them away there. Or has he? All of the water goes flowing over, and the Hebrews cross as fast as they can. While all that water comes rushing back in the form of a giant tidal wave. Where do I even begin with that idea? Okay, first, again, you're bringing logic to the situation. This is one of the parts what has to be a literal act of God. That's why Moses, yeah, I keep thinking of Joseph and Technicolor Dreamcoat. I apologize. Moses parting the Red Sea and having it close safely behind the Hebrews completely and perfectly illustrates this point. By having this giant tidal wave, which actually does catch a good a couple thousand of the Hebrews who couldn't make it to shore on time. Oh, don't worry, there's 400,000 of them. But, yeah, the tidal wave actually does catch people who couldn't make it across in time. Including Moses. Again, the Moses, he stayed behind to try to tell Ramses to go back. Save yourself. But it wouldn't have mattered. All of his men already died inside there. All the very innocent men who completely understood and agreed with Moses inside of this and only followed Ramses because he's supposed to be God. Again, God does not give a shit in this film. And you can't do that. Not with something like this. This is shitting on the source material so bad, it's not even funny. For every good thing they did in this film, there's at least 5 bad things that I can sit here and bitch about for another couple of hours. So, in conclusion, because my voice is getting very hoarse at the moment, and I'm tired of calling Moses Joseph, because I can't seem to undo that in my head. In conclusion, this is not worth seeing in theaters, even if you have a discounted ticket. It's not. It's a cash grab for something that was mildly successful, called Noah. There's so many similarities between the two films that I could spend is just the amount of time as this video explaining why there are so many explaining each of those similarities. And this is supposed to be done by a different director. Maybe it's worth a watch when it comes out on DVD. But don't see it in theaters. Don't pay them to make bloated crap like this with semi-decent trailers, but then no payoff. Showing actors and actresses that we will pay a movie ticket and then completely undercutting them inside the film. Don't. Just don't. I know this is kind of more of a depressing ending, but I imagine I'm going to have to make a similar argument on a lot of this stuff on Tuesday when I go see The Hobbit. So, as always, see you all next time.